All right, we are back on this Tuesday. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. Rob Ellis, Derrick Gunn, Barrett Brooks. We talked a lot. I really hit everything in the first segment with what a big night it is in Philadelphia sports, that's for sure. Delved into a little bit of the Eagles. We're going to dive a little bit further with our next guest. Does an excellent job covering the team from Philadelphia. Boy, that is a handsome graphic we have right there of Jimmy Kempski. That is like a model-esque headshot.
I thought you were just about to call him a handsome guy. I was like, wait a minute.
He's a handsome fella. I mean, that's exactly.
I'm not disagreeing. I was like,
yeah.
I thought you were just saying that. And I was like, okay. All right.
I mean, I think it's a given. I don't really even need to say it. Jimmy Kempski joins us, and you can follow him on Twitter at Jimmy Kempski. What's happening, Jim?
What do you got? My Philly voice profile picture on there?
Yeah, you got kind of the little tough guy. You got a lot going on there, man. I like it.
Hey, Jimmy. I'm going to be honest with you. It's a black and white picture, and it looks like when I first saw the picture, I'm thinking, have you seen this man? If you have, notify your local authorities.
Yes.
Get him off you, Jimmy. Give me
Did
off.
we lose him? Did Jimmy leave? Did he just hang up? Oh my
Jimmy!
God. We lost him. All right, Xander, we'll see if we can get him back up. I think, did we scare him off with all of that? I'm calling him handsome. You're saying it's a mugshot. I don't know what's going on. So we'll try and get him back up here. Who knows? He's headed to the NovaCare complex because the coordinators are speaking today, even though it's a bye week. Nick Sirianni spoke yesterday. Coordinators will speak today.
Let me ask you guys this. As well as this Eagles defense has played, and they've been playing phenomenally in a lot of areas. The one stat we always, not just we, but football fans in general, is jump on is the sack totals.
Yes.
And, they have 17 right now through 6 games. But if you take away the 9 sacks against Washington, they only have 8 sacks against 5 other opponents, which is an average of about 1.6 a game. If they average that the rest of the way, now, granted, when you look at their schedule, they're going to pile up some more stats.
Sure.
They had Pittsburgh, Houston, Washington, Chicago. But if they were average 1 point, less than 2 sacks a game the rest of the way, that would give them roughly 35, 36 total for the season, which is a marginal improvement over the 29 they had a year ago.
Yeah.
Do you care about sack totals if they continue to make the big plays they're making right now?
Sorry.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
I don't. As long as you are getting QB hits and QB pressures. I don't think they even got enough of those last year. They didn't get sacks and they didn't get enough heat on the quarterback. So I'm okay if the numbers don't blow you. It feels like they're coming in bunches for this team. And I think they're even, like you're looking at it, Gunner, and prorating it over how many games they have left.
Absolutely.
They could go crazy in a game and that number can jump pretty high. But I think I'm okay. I'm okay.
I would say Houston and Washington are 2 games where they could really pile up the numbers again.
Yeah. Well, let's pose that to Jimmy. Jim, I don't know if you heard Derrick's question. Basically, if you prorate the sacks out right now, they may not be through the roof as we maybe, thought initially. Does that concern you, or are you looking at it more like, hey, they're getting pressures and creating turnovers, et cetera?
What do you mean by prorate the sacks?
Well, I basically said if you took out the 9 sacks they had against Washington, they have 8 against 5 other teams. And based on that fact, that's like an average of 1.6 a game. If they went the rest of the way, they would have a total of about 35 in the season, which would be a 6 improvement over the 29 they had a year ago. We get so enamored with the sacks instead of the overall play. And I'm not saying I'm just saying the fan base. The one thing about defense we always like to debate, well, they've got more sacks. We got more sacks than you do. Do you care if they only have a marginal increase in the sack totals, considering they're generating turnovers, they're forcing quarterbacks to do things they don't want to do? Do you care if they have a significant amount of sack total compared to what they had last year?
Yeah, you're not going to get to play Carson Wentz every week.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
They had that big game, and otherwise, I think the pressure that they've generated has been generally good. In this past game against Dallas, I thought they were a little bit disappointing, frankly. I thought they had a lot of matchups in their favor in that game, particularly at left guard whenever JP wasn't in there, at left tackle with the rookie, and then at right tackle with Terrence Steele, against the Eagles' left side of the line there. So, I think it's a mild concern going forward because, I mean, they have a lot of resources obviously wrapped up in that defensive line, both on the edge and on the interior. And it's an area where they have to dominate, in my opinion, to make a run throughout the playoffs. And I think they're fine there for now, but certainly want to see a better performance going forward than they gave against Dallas on Sunday night, I think.
Okay. Jimmy, what's been your biggest pleasant surprise about this team? The area where you said, okay, I didn't think it'd be this good, or I didn't think this individual would play this well. I guess maybe the obvious is Hurts, but where would you think?
Yeah, the obvious answer there is Hurts. The secondary has been phenomenal, frankly. Like James Bradbury has been a stud at cornerback for the Eagles. It's been a huge upgrade there from what they had last year. And Steven Nelson was fine last year for the Eagles as the CB2, but Bradbury's been a huge upgrade on him. And I think he got hands on 4 passes against the Cowboys on Sunday night. Slay has been playing at a Pro Bowl level, of course. I think Epps has taken his game to the next level. He hasn't forced any turnovers yet, but I think he's been solid on the back end. We saw Chauncey Gardner-Johnson have his best game by far on Sunday night. He's been a little shaky through the first 4 or 5 games or so, transitioning from more of a slot type of role with New Orleans to more of a free safety role with the Eagles, and that'll take time for him to get adjusted, and I think we're starting to see some results there. Avonte Maddox has been fine when he's been healthy. So yeah, I think that secondary is one of the league's best, which is something that we haven't been able to say about the Eagles in recent years. And they're forcing turnovers, and to the point on the pass rush, by the way, they've done a good enough job of at least forcing some turnovers on the back end, like Marlon Tuipulotu. Week 1 against the Lions, he gets a hit on Jared Goff. That turns into a pick 6 for Bradbury. Week 6, Sunday night, Brandon Graham gets a hit on Cooper Rush. That turns into a Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, interception on the back end there. So the stat for sacks, you want to have a lot of sacks, obviously. They're important, but getting pressure and getting hits on the quarterback, if they're leading to turnovers on the back end, then those are pretty good too. But yeah, I would say the secondary, just as a group, has sort of, and I thought they were going to be good heading into the season, but they have still managed to overperform, in my opinion.
You're right, man. But when I look at it, you think about their lulls in the second half. Can you contribute that to coaching, or do you contribute to the players? What would you say is the biggest thing is on why they can't continue to put together a four-quarter game?
Yeah, it's been a mix, depending on what game we're talking about here. I think some of the second half stuff has been just sort of game flow, like where they just had huge leads and they're in sort of like clock killing mode. The Vikings game is an example of that. I think to an extent the Jaguars game later in the second half is an example of that. Dallas, they were playing well, and then not so much. In the second half, they jumped out to that big lead. The stat that's been thrown around heavily about their second quarter scoring, 112 points to the first 6 games, being the highest point total in any quarter ever in the history of the league through the first 6 games is certainly impressive. And they built these big leads. They've had 2-score leads in every game so far this season. So that's going to change the way you attack opposing defenses in the second half. So I certainly think that they haven't put a full game together yet, and their second half play has to be better. But I think some of that has sort of been game situation. Not the case on Sunday night, to be clear. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't know. I think in the second quarter, what they've done a good job of is they've sort of seen what is working and what is not working in the first quarter, and they make quick adjustments or they go to what is working and they're able to rattle off chunk plays and such. And then I think in the second half, opposing defenses have been able to adjust, and the Eagles just haven't been able to stay ahead. So maybe that's part of it. But you could really attribute that one of 2 ways, whether it's just a matter of them having a big lead and taking their foot off the gas, or if teams are making the necessary adjustments and the Eagles aren't staying ahead.
Yeah, Jim, I think the thing that certainly they have to be better in the third quarter, but really the last 2 weeks, what stood out to me is when they had to have it, they can put together monster drives, and behind their run game almost primarily. But, it's such an equalizer to the other team that feels like they can get on this run. It's like having a great scorer in basketball. All right, time for me to hit a shot here. Like they can just almost end games. Not only are they big time drives, they milk clock too.
Yeah, just like last year, the best thing this team has going for it is the offensive line. They're able to pass protect, and obviously they're able to dominate in the run game when when they need to. And the Cardinals game, they had the 17-play, 70-yard drive, didn't punch it in, but they got a field goal, making it a little more difficult for the Cardinals to score on the ensuing possession. But they burned 8 minutes off the clock on that drive. Then Dallas, that was a huge drive. I mean, let's I mean, that was a big-time, big boy drive after Dallas had narrowed that lead to 3 points, and they go 13 plays. I think it was 75 yards. Yeah. Again, they bleed over 7 minutes off the clock on that drive, and that drive put the game away. And to be able to just mash in the run game in the fourth quarter when you need it is kind of a big deal. Like, that is a huge weapon for any head coach, any team to have. I don't know how many teams in the league can do that the way that the Eagles consistently have done that so far this year. Even last year, they were able to pull off those kinds of drives late in games. So this isn't like an anomaly. I think this is something they can kind of count on as they go forward this season. But yeah, give all the credit there to the offensive line and their ability to just move guys off the ball, especially late in games when and for an older offensive line, it's kind of remarkable how much stamina they're able to have compared to their defensive line counterparts.
Hey, Jimmy, I said on the show yesterday that we scratch our head in wonderment sometimes as to why some of the outside looking in considered Jonathan Gannon as the next guy to get the head coaching position. But yeah. I said Shane Steichen might get a job way before Gannon does. When you look at the way he's called every game this year, he's like a step ahead of everybody else. Even when they have a low period, he knows exactly when to put his foot back on the gas to put distance between himself and the opposition. Can you talk about what Shane Steichen has done in terms of out-strategizing defensive oppositions?
Yeah, Shane and Nick put together a great game plan in this past matchup against Dallas. Just the way that they neutralized Micah Parsons, where they didn't just say, okay, how are we going to stop Micah Parsons? They took the action to Micah Parsons, and they tried to put him in binds where Micah Parsons had to decide, do I attack the ball carrier or do I attack the guy running through my zone? And they did that with RPOs, and they did that similarly to Von Miller during the Super Bowl season in 2017. So that's just one example, I guess, of one way that they've game planned well for an opposing defense. That was a stellar example, in my opinion, this past Sunday night. But yeah, they've both done a good job of game planning, and I think the formula for them works, where Shane Steichen is calling plays during the game, and Nick Sirianni's done a good job with the game and time management aspect. You look at the drives that they put together at the end of the first half. In these first 6 games, they've scored with under 2. In those first 4 games in particular, they scored 5 times within the final 2 minutes of the first half of those games. And I think a big reason why is because Nick Sirianni is concentrating on time and game management, and he can trust Shane Steichen to call a good game in game. So they have a good formula working for them there, and Steichen probably will get some head coaching buzz this season if they continue to sort of out-scheme opposing defenses like they have so far this season.
Yeah, Jim, let me jump on that and just hit a couple other things for what's going well, maybe some things to look at here, some concerns, which we'll get into, maybe special teams here. But I look at I guess the diversity of this offense. They can hurt you with A.J. Brown on a slant, yards after catch, Devonta down the field a little bit here, Dallas Goedert, Sanders, who I think is having a really good year. The numbers aren't like eye-popping, but I think they're pretty good. There's
really good.
A lot of different ways that they can hurt you here, which I think just serves them so well as we go forward, even though they are going to be the hunted here.
Sanders is 4th in the league in rushing.
Yeah. I should probably give him more love. No, I think he's having a great year, even though he doesn't have maybe Saquon Barkley numbers, I guess.
Yeah. He's having a good year, and I think he's running hard. And a big thing is he hasn't put the ball on the ground yet, which is knock on wood, I guess. But he's done a good job with ball security. But yeah, what you're saying is absolutely right. They can beat you in a lot of different ways. You have to account. They were the number 1 rushing offense in the NFL last year. And they have that in their arsenal if they need it, like we've seen at the end of these games in the fourth quarter. So they can beat you that way. They can beat you, as you said, with A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert with yards after the catch. They can beat you with Devonta Smith and his route running, separation, all that. Quez Watkins had a big play. He's sort of been a forgotten guy so far this year, but in week 2 he had the big play down on the field. Zach Pascal sort of doing the dirty work at wide receiver, and I think it's all coming together. Like you take one thing away, they can beat you a different way, and I think that we've seen through these first 6 games that they've won games in a wide assortment of ways, and that's sort of what championship caliber teams kind of do. So I think that's maybe one of the biggest positives of this season so far is that they've been diverse in the way that they've both offensively and defensively, frankly, in the way that they can attack their opponent. And they're not just a one-trick pony. Like week 1 they beat Detroit in a shootout. Week 2 they just destroyed the Vikings zone defense. Week 4 they got punched in the mouth early against the Jaguars. They win in a bad weather game. You can go on and on. Like I don't have to go through every game here, but they've won in a wide assortment of ways, which is, again, I think that's what the best teams are able to do.
Well, Jimmy, this is kind of a crazy question to ask when you're 6-0, and you talk a lot about chemistry. With the trade deadline being, what is it, November 1st, I think?
Yes.
Is there any deficiencies you see this team in which they need to bolster up something or maybe get rid of somebody that could give them some valuable trade value? I mean, is there any direction in which you think they take advantage of this trade deadline?
So if they're in just go for it mode, then I think they could add a pass rusher. Not that their pass rush is bad, but with Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, Hassan Reddick, they certainly have got. And I'm talking specifically about edge rusher. Not that they're already loaded up on the interior. You look at a guy like Brian Burns from Carolina.
Carolina, yep.
Huge cost. Like at a minimum, I think they're looking for the first round pick that the Eagles have from the Saints. I don't know if the Eagles want to part with that, given how high that pick could potentially wind up being. But that's a guy that I think makes sense. But at edge rusher, their depth is shaky there. I mean, we look at Derek Barnett, I think, and we kind of go, oh, well, that's not really a big loss. But that's a guy that the Eagles were counting on this year to give them snaps, and he's gone for the season, obviously. And when you just look specifically at the defensive end position, and we're taking Hassan Reddick out of the equation here, I mean, they have Josh Sweat and they have Brandon Graham. If either of those guys go down, they're in trouble.
Don't say that, man. Don't say that.
That's a great point, though. That's a great point.
So if they add an edge rusher, they kind of, they're in better shape if something like that goes down. But also, you can never have too many of those guys. And if you can add like an elite talent like a Brian Burns or there are other guys that I think, you can maybe go a little bit more in the bargain bin that can, get Jerry Hughes from Houston, for example, is another guy that I think makes sense. You could sort of at a minimum bolster the depth. But if you really want to go all in, then a guy like Burns would be sort of the guy. It's like, okay, now we really, from a national perspective, now we really got to take the Eagles seriously.
Jimmy, I know a lot of players that I've talked to through the years don't like having the early bye week, especially when they're on the roll. But yeah. I think for this Eagles team, the bye week couldn't have come at a better time. They are one of the healthiest teams in the league, yet you're starting to see little nicks add up here and there. So how do you feel about them having this early bye week in this case?
Yeah, I think they'd probably still like to have it later, but your point is well taken because you look at like the injury report heading into that Dallas game. Mailata, Dickerson, Kelsey, Seumalo. Of course, during the game, they lose Lane Johnson to the concussion. So, yeah, just from the offense, it can't possibly come at a better time for the offensive line specifically. Those guys can all heal up, and they'll also have, by the way, another sort of like mini bye. They'll have 2 games. They'll have they're home against Pittsburgh, and they go on the road to Houston, and then they'll have that mini bye after that Thursday night game. So, this will be an opportunity for the offensive line at least to heal up. But yeah, particularly for Lane Johnson, I think it comes at the best time possible. And I think we kind of saw what the Eagles' offense looked like after Lane Johnson went out.
Yeah.
I think he's maybe one of the most underrated players in the NFL. Like, people talk about him being the best right tackle in the NFL. I say screw that. Like, he's one of the best players in the NFL. Forget.
Yes.
So, like,
yes.
His importance is critical to this team. And Nick Sirianni even said, I actually asked him after the game what was with the end of the first half decision to just sort of take a knee and take it into halftime, which is, not their MO. They had 29 seconds left, I think it was, on their own 25, couple timeouts, and they were content to just go through the tunnel into the locker room. That's not their MO. And when asked why, he said, "Well, we just lost Lane Johnson." So, I think having that guy in the lineup is his importance to the team can't be overstated. So, yeah, getting him back and healthy is a big deal, and certainly the bye week will help with that.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim, I'm a big points per game guy, right? And when it comes to points allowed, and I look at what the Eagles are doing this year and what they're allowing, and to me, it's right around where you want to be. Is it number one in the NFL? No, but it's certainly really, really good. I look at takeaways; they're doing a great job with that. But there are still a lot of Jonathan Gannon critics. Where do you stand on the job that he's done?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of different quibbles that you can come up with in literally every game. Like the Cowboys game, for example. From my perspective, I figured it's Cooper Rush. You have to stop the run first and foremost in this game. Make that guy make plays through the air. And I don't know that was totally the game plan on there, but like they were getting gashed in the run, with the run at certain points. Jordan Davis, I think only played, I think it was like 22 snaps or something like that.
Right.
I thought he was going to have a much bigger role in this game. So we can quibble about those.
He needed to.
Things, but then like the game's over and you kind of look back and you go, well, they gave up 17 or what was it? Yes. They gave up 17 points and they took the ball away 3 times. So like, there are certain things that like we can kind of complain about from week to week, but ultimately the results week one, where they really gave up a lot of points to the Lions, that game aside, I think when you take a step back and you look at what the actual results are, you go, okay, well, it seems kind of silly to quibble about what they've done here. But yeah, I think there are certain things from week to week that do frustrate the fans, and for good reason.
Well, let's talk about something that is a legitimate concern. There's not a ton as we go forward here, and it's special teams. They don't return the ball well in any case. The punter,
right.
Although I thought he was okay Sunday night, has not been great. And they were leaky in coverage on Sunday. Granted, that Turpin kick can fly, but that's an area that's really lagging behind everywhere else. Is that there's not enough talent there for Michael Clay, or Michael Clay needs to step his game up?
Turpin, he kind of gave them a spark in that game. Dallas had nothing going for them at that point in the game when he had that 62 or 63-yard return, turned into a field goal for them. Could have been worse, maybe, if Mike McCarthy hadn't turned into a coward and kicked a field goal at the end of that ensuing drive. But yeah, it's been problematic in terms of their kick and punt coverage. They had a field goal blocked. Obviously, they were fortunate that Aaron Sipos was able to make the tackle on that play after the field goal block. They've had other miscues seemingly most weeks, and they've survived them so far. But at some point, if the special teams mistakes continue, it's going to cost them a game at some point. So, yeah, I don't know what the answer is necessarily. And certainly, as you mentioned, like the return units have been non-existent. Like Britton Covey's given them nothing as a kick returner or a punt returner. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if it's blocking or if it's just that they're just lacking juice from the actual return position. I know a lot of people are wondering if that's an area. I mentioned edge rusher before as a potential position to attack at the trade deadline. I don't know that the Eagles prioritize the return game in a way that they'll seek that out at the trade deadline. I think their philosophy on kick returns, by the way, is once you have a good returner, then the opposing team just kicks it through the back of the end zone. Whereas now, like, they kind of try to pop it up and they force the Eagles to return. But yeah, and certainly the special teams are one of the big concerns for this team going forward, because they have consistently made mistakes in that phase of the game in almost every game so far.
Hey, Jimmy, if you had your pick, who would you put back there in the return game?
It would probably be Covey, because they just don't have anyone else. I mean, they just don't have anyone else. I mean, you could put Quez back there on kick returns, but I think he's kind of proven that, he's not. They had Jason Huntley, who easily would be the best kick returner on the team. I don't, have a problem with them not keeping him, like cutting him or whatever. But yeah, I'm certainly with the fans who think that, attacking, going after a kick/punt returner at the trade deadline makes sense. But yeah, they're just kind of, I think it's probably, they probably kind of have to stick with Covey, because what else do they have? Yeah. I mean, you could go like I wonder if there's a Greg Ward type of player who you can put back there that is at least going to field every punt or close to it. But Covey's kind of had his shake. He did have I forget which game he had the muff in. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's not a great situation. It's certainly from the return units.
Mm. All right, Jim. Lastly, the double dip here, man. First, what happens with the Phillies and the Padres NLCS, and expectations for the Sixers this season? Let's start with the Phils.
Yeah, I can't really give you any further analysis than just, yay, let's go Phillies.
Stop being so technical, Jim. All right.
The Sixers I like. Again, I haven't really looked at what the rest of the Eastern Conference looks like, but so yeah, I'll just kind of go with a double dip on the yay, let's go Phillies, yay, let's go Sixers.
Good analysis there, Jim. We appreciate it, man. Thanks for sneaking us in before the coordinators. Check you out at Philly Voice, of course, and at Jimmy Kempski on Twitter as well. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate you.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
All right, you got it. All right, guys, let's get a quickie here. We'll talk to Scott Fransky when we get back. We'll flip it over to the Phillies and then back to the Eagles. And you know what, Xander? Let's go right to the break. We'll hold off on the live read. He's Derrick Gunn. He's Barrett Brooks. I'm Rob Ellis. We are Sports Take. We'll be right back with Scott Fransky.